Hey y'all, hope you're doing good today. So, I want to talk a little bit about tolerance and how we can kind of do a little mini deep dive on that today and be encouraged and inspired as we're moving forward on our journey, right? Away from situations that were bad, that were toxic in some way. So, I know that we all tolerate a lot. And this is not only within, our families and our circumstances, but also within ourselves. I think we can be our biggest critics sometimes. But and I think that in a way, being aware of flaws and faults and things like this can keep us humble. So, um, but essentially, and let me share this quote with regards to humility. I thought this was really cool. I don't know who said this, but there's a quote that says that humility, to be humble, is not to think less of yourself, but to think of yourself less. And I thought that's pretty cool. But I'm going to share a picture with you all, just as an example of something that I tolerate in my everyday life. And this has been ever since I brought in my plants from the cold, which this one's not doing so hot. I just pulled some of the some of the leaves off that are frostbit, I guess you could say. The cold just really did a number on it. I didn't bring it in quick enough. I thought it would be okay on my carport, and it was not. So I'm hoping that it will recover, but yeah. So my aloe plant, check this out. This thing is huge, and I have it currently sitting in my kitchen. And every time I walk past it, there's this one little piece of it that sticks way, way out in my walkway. And I just know one of these days it's going to like take my eye out. It's going to poke my eye out or something. So, but it'll grab my hair when I'm walking by and everything. It's huge. I love it. I love it. And I need to Google and go on YouTube and try to find some channels that talk about gardening and figure out how I can actually harvest it. If I need to cut the whole thing down during the winter time, and I think you can freeze, the aloe leaves for use later, and just make your own medicinal creams and things like that. I think that's cool. But anyway, it's beautiful. But yeah, I tolerate walking around it and having to dodge it constantly. And that reminds me, I've shared this story with you all before. I don't remember where I heard it. I'm thinking it may have been on Dr. Les Carter's channel, but I could be totally wrong. But there's a story of this young man who was old enough to be on his own, but he was still at home with his parents. And they were just really frustrated, in having to tolerate him just not being self-sufficient and getting up and doing for himself and making a living for himself. And so one of the things that was interesting as he entered therapy is he was describing his life, and this is just from my memory, so hopefully this is somewhat accurate. At least I can get the point across. But he would just go so far in, say, like a chore. I think the example in the story was laundry. He would go so far as to wash his clothes and get them out of the dryer, and then he would bring the laundry basket in and sit it down at his door at his bedroom, and it would stay there for weeks and weeks, and he would just step over it instead of just going ahead and putting it up. And so I think that an example like that, it's easy to point the finger and be like, I'd never be like that. But if you look at your own life, I wonder if, especially after conditioning from the past that maybe we haven't yet identified fully, that may have impacted us in some way to be submissive and to live passively. I wonder if you can identify just little things in your life where you tolerate things and you're not even conscious that you're doing it. This has been really interesting for me to look into because I have found this in my own life. And it's easy just to say, well, it's just simply a matter of prioritizing what you do with your time. And maybe that's true partially, but even looking at that, like why? Why do you prioritize doing these things instead of these things, or this instead of that? It's kind of like, I go back to Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants, and which you can Google that. It was in one of his books, and it's just so interesting how these fire alarm not actual non-emergencies come across to our psyche as emergencies, and they just get all of our attention. And then the real important stuff gets totally overlooked and sometimes just totally dismissed and forgotten about. So it's about it's about not just reclaiming our life, but it's also about working to undo old mental conditioning and brainwashing and spell work to become fully conscious of all the mechanics and the dynamics of your life. It's I like to look at life as your own artistic creation. And we all have different styles, especially in the art field. We really do all have different styles. And that was something that I'll just share real quick, a little side note, tangent with you all. I used to teach art to elementary kids, aged kids, and I loved it. I loved that job. And for me, I think that, trying to help another person's art develop in their own style and rooted in their own interests and things like that, it kind of expanded me. And so now I have a great interest in all kind of different art styles and media and everything. I'm into origami and mixed media and even like these little, I like to wear these too, these little resin rings. You can pour your own resin jewelry. You get these little dome shaped molds, and you could just pour in glitter and all kind of different things, little flower petals if you want, and then they harden, and there you go. So it's just all kind of arts and crafts. Teaching elementary age kids just kind of obliterated, I guess you might say, me ever sticking with one style of art. That's just not going to happen. I'm gonna be playing with all of it. It's too fun. It's too fun. But that's something else we're going to talk about. I'm not even looking at my notes, y'all. But we all have this little spark, I feel like, from the greater divine fire of creativity in our spirit, and the way we live our life is a part of that. And I think that the more we can work at undoing literal brainwashing that is restrictive, then we are freeing ourselves to live consciously in our life and create our life and have an impact on this world in some way, even if it's just within our own family and leaving, a legacy, with our kids, and something that, we can, at the end of our life, which we never know when that's going to come, and that's a humbling thing to think about too. But whenever that time gets here, it's like we can transition, to the next place, from a place of peace, because we feel like, no, nobody's perfect, and we certainly weren't perfect either, but we made a very strong effort to do some good in the world from a conscious place, and for me, that's just something that's worth working for, to become more and more conscious. So I think that we can burn up our time without realizing it on things that we tolerate, situations we tolerate. So I was looking at just a little fun word study. Y'all know I love to do this, my little Latin English dictionary. But I looked up to tolerate, and the Latin version is tolerare or tolerare. And then tolerance in Latin is patienti, which is like patience, right? But it also said that it's related to submissiveness, okay? And then tolerably, the English word tolerably is related to mediocriter, I don't know. But it's basically like mediocrity, And it means if you're doing something tolerably, it's said it's like moderately, fairly, not particularly, not much. This is just all, to me, this essence of a life of passivity. You're not really engaging much in it. You're like being taken on a ride. You're not in the driver's seat kind of energy. So going back to that first word, to tolerate, is tolerare. It also means to endure. Now, I think generally we associate that word, to endure, with, that being honorable. It's like to be steadfast, to persevere. That all seems honorable, But it also means tolerare, to support, to maintain, and to sustain. So looking up maintain, the Latin word for that is tenere, which means softly. So when you look at the few Latin words right there that are all related, you have teneo, or teneoere, meaning to hold tight, to possess, to restrain, and to repress. Okay? Again, related to soft, which on the English side is to maintain, right? To maintain, related to tolerance. Okay? And then we have in Latin tenerera, meaning soft, delicate, but also impressionable and weak. Okay? Then you have tenor, or tenoris, meaning uninterrupted course and continuity. Okay? Essentially, in the past, I think that in our efforts to operate from a place of humility and trying to do the right thing, to be compassionate and come from a place of love and all this stuff, we have essentially allowed our circumstances to be in the driver's seat. And so I was looking at the word circumstance. If we are allowing that to take precedent, okay, in our life. Circumstance. Circum is like circular. It's like, and again, I'm going back to what I just read. Teneo, or teneoere, to hold tight, to restrain, to repress. Your circumstances can do that to you. You are essentially enclosed, okay, in this system that is all because of your circumstances. It's like an enclosure. So if you think about, okay, all right, so this course that is just not healthy, it's not fruitful, you might say, whatever it is, in order to change that course or to interrupt the continuity, right? I looked up the word Latin, or the Latin word interruptus, meaning it means that to interrupt, right? To break off, to break apart, to smash, divide, and scatter. And I think that I highlight all of that to say this. All of that is a perfect illustration of why a lot of us don't want to rock the boat. Why a lot of us, are just in the past, hopefully in the past, we just get deeper and deeper and deeper restrained. We don't realize it. It feels that way energetically, though. Repressed, because we feel like we are doing something honorable. We are enduring our circumstances. Because the alternative has this kind of energy, right? The alternative has the energy of breaking something, smashing, dividing, scattering. And so the result is that we just keep tolerating, and we stay stuck, okay? Because, again, the energetic feeling of the alternative doesn't feel right. It's kind of like, it does almost feel not just scary, but it feels wrong, because it feels like you are breaking the structure of your reality, everything. When in reality, if you can, start that crack, then it's like once it shatters, you realize that you broke your containment. So I want to give some examples. So, there are people who are considered hoarders, right? They literally can't get rid of anything. And it's, I'm certainly no expert, but just as a quick example, a lot of people can look at that and be like, well, why would you not just go in and just throw some stuff away? This is just trash. This stuff is not useful whatsoever. But these people can't do it. They can't do it. And through this lens today of all the things I'm sharing with you, all the bits and pieces, the little puzzle pieces, right? We're putting it together to see the bigger picture, the puzzle. Through this lens that we're putting together, that we're constructing together in this conversation, this discussion, I think the reason that in this example, hoarders cannot just simply get rid of, a lot of the trash, literally, that's just sitting around, that's consuming not only their house and their yard, but their life, is because the energy is like what I just described. It's a destructive energy. It's like to them, probably, I've seen these shows in the past where they get very anxious and unsettled at even the thought of throwing some stuff away. And so it's kind of like not just feeling like it's wasteful to throw stuff away, but like it's a destructive energy. You're breaking something apart. You're shattering their reality. And so this is, to me, just highlighting the impact within our psyche of what it means to tolerate, okay, versus to act. Okay. Another example would be people who won't leave a really bad relationship. And I think codependency plays a big part in this, but I think that it's the energetic tie, and a lot of times this is referred to as the trauma bond, right? But it's like an energetic tie is how I see it. It just feels destructive, even though the relationship is destructive to that person. For them to act to break out of this confinement or containment, okay, of this destructive structure or enclosure, it's requires of them an act of destruction to break the relationship apart. So I want to talk about these two energies. I think that a lot of times we polarize stuff and we, look at stuff in a black and white way. And I know I have. And so I think it's real easy to just overgeneralize, and even within academics and stuff like this is very common. We can look at these two energies as being, creation and destruction, and just assume that they're on the opposite. They're totally opposite. No relation whatsoever. But if we zoom out, okay, from a bird's eye view, and we see these two energies as actually being on the opposite ends of the same spectrum, almost like this bar or something, this connecting something that you can't see, right? All you can see is, these over here on the end. Well, then you realize that they actually work together. And so when you are tolerating, when you get to a place where it's almost like a snowball effect, I have found, where you tolerate, okay, and maybe it starts because you think you're expected to tolerate, because if you try to voice your opinion or whatever it is, it just gets shut down repeatedly, and you get conditioned that this other person or this group or your family or whatever is happiest if you just go along with whatever, and you never, create any kind of impact whatsoever within this marriage or family or whatever, and you just kind of stay quiet. Then it leads to a snowball effect, and you you never wind up voicing anything, and it's just a snowball of tolerance. And what happens is it turns into a life of passivity, if that's even a word. I think it is, of stagnation. Okay, it's like it just slows down. Think about water when it's frozen. Water when it's not is going to flow. Water when it's frozen, it's just ice cold. It's stagnant. It's not going anywhere. It's kind of like that, which again I think is very much related to the trauma response of freeze. But if we think of life as a flow, then we realize again these two energies, creation and destruction, are working together to create the flow. Okay, it's like this ongoing cyclical pattern that they both depend on one another. Okay, like a magnetic type thing where they work together to create this energetic flow. But it's life. That's what life is. And it's just right there in front of our face in nature. Creation and destruction, right? But the result is what? The result is life. So, again, when you just zoom in on the one aspect that is a requirement, which is destruction, it has this energy of bad, to break something. It's like, oh God, I don't want to do that, So instead of looking at the two energies as being creation and destruction, I would say it's more like flow versus non-flow. And an example of that, of non-flow, stagnation, would be water, stagnant water. Like if you have a pond and it's got, a water source that's coming in that's bringing in fresh water and it's got an outlet, if somehow that gets blocked off, then you're going to get stagnant water. What happens? You're going to have a buildup, okay, like a snowball effect again. You're going to have a buildup of bacteria, bad bacteria, and it's going to wind up being very toxic, literally. Now, what's interesting is and that's going to lead to decay, right? Or non-life. So you have flow leading to life, non-flow leading to decay and non-life. Okay, death, essentially. So let's look at this example again of this pond, okay, this water. To reverse the effects of this stagnation and this toxic decaying pond, this environment, we have to first disrupt the poor environment or break it up. We have to go in and interrupt, disrupt, okay? And we have to flush out the toxins. Now, think about this. You can't just drain the toxins and then it's all good. You have to flush them out. Okay, this is important. Think about the life forms that are contained in the pond, or like in the aquarium, for example, because I just cleaned my aquarium. So maybe this is why this is on my mind. But those life forms require water. Okay? Just go with me. So our psyche, and even I would say our heart, our mind and our heart are the same way, which is part of the reason why we're also, or also part of the reason why we stay stuck and tolerate. We need community. We need one another. And a lot of times if we're in this really bad group of people that, we thought were honorable and had integrity and values at first, and then we find out that they don't, it's, sometimes the alternative is like, well, I don't want to just be alone. This is just the group of people I have to socialize right now with or whatever. So, again, I truly think our psyche especially, but even our heart, it's all kind of intimately tied together. They require this sustenance. So like in the example of the pond or the aquarium, you can't just drain the dirty water because the fish would die. You have to replace it. So that's what happens when you're flushing out the toxins, okay? You're not removing the water, you are replacing it. Now the difference in how we do this, I think that people who have unresolved issues, people who are not willing to introspect and reflect and do the hard work, essentially. It's almost like you can witness this dynamic within them, because they'll replace people like it's like they're changing socks or shoes or whatever. But that's, to me, that's using people, and it's not true, genuine connection. All right. So when we replace this toxicity in our life, we need good, positive sustenance in the places where the decaying material was. Now, as opposed to people who are searching to fill that void out here, outside, exploiting, people and circumstances and stuff like that, as opposed to that, the good news is that we have the ability within to create this good sustenance once again, just all within us. Okay? Remember, we have the ability to be a creator ourselves, and that's really, really important. And when you've become habituated in a life of tolerance and it has snowballed, essentially you've become complacent, you've become stagnant. And when that happens, you are cut off from this huge part of who you really are, which is a creative being. Okay? Jesus said, in the Bible, when he was performing miracles, literally, he said, you can do these things that I'm doing and even greater things. That's huge. It's like, do we really believe that? That's huge. But I want you to consider even the divine design of our body, okay? When we lose blood, for example, or we give blood or whatever, the heart is designed to regenerate it within us. So it's like our body it creates within itself. It's like we are our own closed, self-sustaining system, which is amazing and beautiful to me. But just, again, looking at this design of our body, just take that, and it's like a little fractal piece of God's handiwork, and you can start to understand, when you expand your mind, that we have the same ability too, just energetically with creating our life. And in creating our life, we are creating life itself. We are participating in the flow. We become a part of that greater river. It's huge. That's huge, Again, just to wrap up, some people take to restore themselves, and some people create to restore themselves. And so there's just two very, very different energies. And I just want to share with you all from The Wizard of Oz. If you remember the good witch, Glinda, she told Dorothy, she said, you had the power all along. And that's the gift. That's the treasure to find in this process, on this journey. So I hope this has been encouraging. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you feel called to share them. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.